program may contain images of people who have died.
Hello and welcome to Four Corners. I'm Sarah Ferguson. 2 months ago, we brought you a story on the shocking treatment of juvenile detainees in the Northern Territory. We called it Australia's Shame, and it prompted the Prime Minister to call a royal commission within hours of the story being broadcast. Central to the soul-searching that followed the program is the terrible rate at which young Aboriginal Australians are incarcerated. More than 50% of young people who are locked up are Indigenous. Tonight, we bring you a story of hope in a troubled community trying to change the lives of its young people. The outback town of Bourke, with a population of 3,000, has grappled with a chronic crime problem for years. Juvenile detention is a rite of passage for many young Indigenous people in the town. 9 out of 10 boys who get locked up in Bourke reoffend within 12 months. In the hope of reversing those statistics, the town has adopted a US program called Justice Reinvestment. It spends money not on prisons, but on community programs to keep kids out of jail. Jeff Thompson reports.
It's the last training session for Bourke's footy team before the weekend's semi-final. It starts about an hour late, and not everybody makes it.
We're Craig here.
Those who do show up bring buckets of determination and guts.
That should be a penalty. Mate, they play with their heart. These kids, these boys, they play against men. I've seen these boys get knocked down by men and get back up and run back in again. And it's unbelievable. They haven't got the strength they've got. Mate, they play for their lives, you know. They just love football.
At 36, Jonathan Knight's best playing years are behind him. But his team's never been better.
And I just can't believe that, you know, the first year we might be going into the grand final if we win this weekend.
Jonathan's mate is Jamie Moore, the Bourke Warriors coach.
We've come a long way this year anyway, boys. You know, I think the big goal is to bust Cobar. They beat us last game. But I think we've shown all year that, you know, we're the team to beat.
Jonathan and Jamie were born here and both know how easy it is to go off the rails. They've beaten alcohol and trouble with the law. Now they're trying to prove to Bourke's boys that there's a better way to live.
Without football, these kids might be doing something or might be on the wrong path, you know, and with football, these kids are doing something positive.
Away from football training, there's not much at night for kids to do. Bourke's cops are busiest after dark.
How often do police come across kids on the streets in Bourke at night?
I would say every night. I can't think of a night shift where there hasn't been a group of kids walking the street from at any time from now up until 3, 4, 5 a.m.
And here's some just up ahead.
Bourke's a town of 3,000, and it has the highest rate of criminal offences by young people in New South Wales. Just about all of them are committed by Aboriginal kids.
I've spoken to to kids before and ask them why they, for instance, may have broken into a house when they know people are inside, and they normally reply with a smile that it's exciting. We get a buzz from it, we get a kick from it, and you know, as our role in the grand scheme of things, I don't know how we deal with that. I don't know how we deter people that find something exciting when they're, say, 10, 12, 13 years old.
There you go.
After 3 years driving these streets at night, Senior Constable Gavin Smith knows Bourke's kids well.
Yeah, I don't wait till my brother did that to me. Not long now.
Is he your brother?
Yeah.
Oh, is he? He's in now, isn't he?
Huh?
Where's he, in juvie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He in Sydney down there.
In Sydney, is he?
They move them around all the time.
Yeah, right. When's he out?
Before Christmas.
Yeah.
It can be safer out here than at home, and detention is often no deterrent.
I actually dropped 2 kids, 2 13-year-olds yesterday to the airport. They were bail refused by the magistrate here for breaking into a series of vehicles and other thefts. And they were both excited like it was Christmas morning that they were going on a plane and to juvenile justice. They could tell me who was in JJ's in Dubbo and who they'd be catching up with and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, they were definitely excited about that. You know, in the juvenile setting, I know they're given 3 square meals a day, they're given warmth, schooling, activities, things like that. So, you know, and those things that could be missing in the family home here in Bourke.
At the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about the best outcomes and best results, particularly for our children. And so I think it's quite fitting to, particularly with the age groups that we're focused on today through the working group being 8 to 18 years, it's Bourke and community in a genuine partnership that's pioneering a new approach.
Alistair Ferguson is leading a fresh push by the Bourke community to keep its young people out of jail. He was jailed as a young man too, for assaulting a police officer.
When I came out, I was 27, but it was a lot of time to think and put things in perspective, and then start looking at where I needed to be as a man, I guess. I just certainly felt that I was, I had something to offer, and to contribute to, to ensure that particularly young people don't make the same mistakes. And I'll just
Bourke's experiment is called Justice Reinvestment. It's about spending money on community programs to help people avoid jail rather than on locking them up.
So Justice Reinvestment is really about spending more on communities and less on prisons. So it involves working out ways that you can shift resources out of the prison system into early intervention and crime prevention and diversion. When the working groups come across an issue...
Lawyer Sarah Hopkins and her team brought the idea of justice reinvestment to Bourke. The approach comes from the United States, where it's dramatically reducing prison populations.
An example is Texas. So in 2007, they were projecting they were going to need to spend an additional $2 billion because of the rising prison population. So they sat down and they thought hard about what they could do to stop that happening, is to stop that rising prison population. So they looked at some diversionary options, drug and alcohol programs, and they implemented an approach that meant that they saved the state $450 million. And that was because they could shelve the plan to build new prisons, and they were actually able to shut prisons.
But can an idea proven successful on the other side of the world work here in remote Australia, in a town with its own unique problems and history?
The Aboriginal Reserve, the dumping ground for the dark people of Bourke, where citizens of one of the most affluent countries in the world live in deplorable circumstances.
In the 1940s, a reserve on the fringes of town became home for displaced Aborigines from over 20 different language groups. They were dirt poor.
No one pretends that in conditions like these, squalid, dirt-floored, tin-roofed humpies, there isn't fighting, drinking and disease. But for some who live here, it's a way of life they prefer, away from the town and the pressures of the white man's way.
Over the years, many have come to Bourke to help. Mother Teresa's sisters set up a mission here in 1969.
The nuns set to work on basics, washing the children and making clothes for the youngsters running loose around the tin humpies without water or electricity.
The kids don't come in and ask for this and that. They got the sisters there to tell them what they want and that.
The only nagging suspicion about the nuns is that they're being too helpful, too coddling to the Aborigines, too defeating to the concept of self-help.
Country towns are supposed to be places where you can leave your back door unlocked or enjoy a hassle-free stroll down the main street. But that's all changed in Bourke.
By the 1990s, Bourke had a serious crime problem.
I've had this mission for about 5 years, and what caused me to put it in the first instance was that we had 24 break-ins in one 12-month period.
People are breaking into their houses, stealing their videos, stealing their TVs.
A lot of young fellas walk around with shanghais and a lot of sticks and bottles and smash windows, break in, get a lot of clothes.
Who's doing that?
A lot of people. Us, we're doing it, but we're sort of getting good at it, not breaking in no more. We're not breaking in no more now, but...
A lot of young Aboriginal kids are even knocking their own Aboriginal people over now, you know? And that's a shame when it gets to that stage, because you go back 10, 15 years ago, you know, it's young people these days, they just don't show respect for their elders anymore, and that's where the big breakdown is, you know?
We don't have no authority to do what we have to do. And I think that part has been taken away. And I think that's very sad. And we see the result of that.
Bourke Tribal Council member Phil Sullivan says crime touches everyone.
I always say that if you went to any prison, juvenile justice centre in this state, you'd find one of our families there, bro.
What's the effect of that on the Aboriginal people of Bourke that aren't in prison?
My family in there, so it affects me, you know. And I can't do nothing about that. I can love them from a distance. And I can't do nothing about that. And I'm powerless to do something, and I want to do something for that. And I can imagine that every family that's in this community, that's come from this community, is feeling the same thing.
There's been heaps of money coming into Bourke and other Western towns for years, and doesn't seem to be doing the job. Whether that money needs to be spent better and that money tied to outcomes. So, yeah, I'm not sure what the answer is, but certainly we need to do something.
Mayor for 8 years, Andrew Lewis agrees that Bourke's crime problem needs a new approach.
Well, nothing else seems to have worked over the years, so, and it's coming from the Aboriginal community, so hopefully those leaders in the Aboriginal community can get the people to listen to it and to try and fix things, yeah, get it working better.
Bourke's new experiment has 3 years to prove itself. It's based on hard data about crime and social disadvantage, so that both success and failure can be measured.
We'll be able to track that progress over a period of time. What's critical to this whole process is transparency and accountability. And we need to put an evidence base around what works and what doesn't work. And because that's important too, this is really a test and trial process. So if something's not working, stop it. If something is working, let's do more of it.
We're backing them with the gathering of the data, but also looking at how we might use all that money that currently goes into Bourke in a better and more effective way. I think it's actually beyond politics. I think that generally across Australia there is an earnest, willing energy about trying to do something different. They're just not sure what it is. You know, we've had a couple of 100 years of really complete failure. And how we now approach the experiment in Bourke is important, I think. Across Australia, Australia will be watching.
We want to have an opportunity to say, well, all right, here's another way to do it. Reinvest that, what we have, back into our community. Reinvest our old people back to our community. Reinvest our young men. Don't send them away anymore. Reinvest our children back to us. Let us have a go at it.
All right, let's go.
At Bourke Public School's Early Years Transition Centre, it's come as your favourite superhero day.
Who are you today, Ken?
Superman. You're Spider-Man.
Welcoming the kids is Principal Kylie Pennell.
Wow, look at these.
So instead of sitting on the mat today, we're going to sit on in the square. Well done. 1, 2, 3. Sitting in the square.
3/4 of Bourke Primary's kids are Aboriginal.
In the square.
The centre prepares them for school a year earlier, so they don't get left behind.
It was evident that some of our kids were going through, not all of them, some of them were going through their schooling years, and they were behind because when they started they were behind. So there was this flow-on effect. So
once behind, they stay behind.
Yeah, exactly. It's very hard to catch them up, even though we try very, very hard.
The school's attendance rate has risen from 86% to 92% since Kylie Pennell's been in charge. As kids get older, the problems start. The student suspension rates at Bourke's public schools are among the highest in the state.
I left school early. And there seemed to be, you hang out on the streets and hang around parties and, start getting on the grog and using drugs and that sort of stuff.
Jamie Moore knows how disengaging from school can lead to trouble.
Yeah, and then from there it sort of leads to crime and then when I left school, I ended up getting in trouble with the police and, it sort of carried on until my early 20s and I ended up going to jail. I think it was a good time to sort of come to terms with reality. And if I continued to go down that path, I'd be stuck in that cycle of having a life in and out of jail.
9 out of 10 boys who get locked up in Bourke reoffend within 12 months of being released.
The blokes that I left school to hang around with, well, they're still in and out of jail. So, and unfortunately they're still stuck in that cycle of, being repeat offenders and in and out of jail. So when I talk to the kids, I relate to my experience and say that, jail is no place for any kid or any man or any person.
Before the sun's up, Bourke's top cop, Greg Moore, is on his way to work. He first worked here as a young detective sergeant before returning to be the boss.
Look, Bourke still has challenges like any community, but certainly in the last 13 years I've noticed a big change. There seems to be a lot more optimism about. Hey Tanya, how are you going?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Greg Moore is one of Justice Reinvestment's most enthusiastic supporters.
There's certainly a time and a place for some swift enforcement of the laws of the land, but equally what we're about here is trying to prevent crime in the first place, but also prevent the causes of the crimes.
I actually don't think you could run a justice reinvestment initiative without the police at the table. From the outset, the police have been very much at the table in this project. Hello.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
How are you?
Where should I sit?
Is
this
front
good?
and centre. Yeah, how you going?
Hi.
G'day, Alistair.
right,
How are you, mate? Have a seat and we'll introduce everyone.
Today, Sarah Hopkins and Alistair Ferguson are meeting with the police to talk about how to reduce the number of kids being locked up for breaching bail.
Maybe if we start with the bail protocols.
Of course, yeah.
Really, kind of, there's two sides to the bail protocols. One is what we're hoping the police can do, and then the other side is what we're hoping the community can do, and particularly the community in supporting the young people to comply with bail conditions. So we're kind of calling that idea come halfway. Yeah.
Bourke's troubled kids struggle to meet bail conditions, such as curfews, which require them to be home after dark. Breaching bail can get kids locked up, even though they would have never gone to jail for their original offences.
Mick, have you got any input or views from being firstly a community member, but also that Aboriginal community liaison role?
Yeah, it all depends how they're breaching their bail, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
If it's serious, well, it's got to be taken a bit seriously.
Yeah.
But if they're just out at night, you know, just going down the shop or something, get something to eat, well, a few warnings.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If a kid breaches bail, the Justice Reinvestment team wants the police to contact them so they can help.
Yeah, I think it's a great concept, and certainly we see it all the time. If we get that powerful community support with someone that's a little bit vulnerable, and whether it be a drug and alcohol dependency or homelessness or other vulnerability, you engage with the right service. It just gives that platform to get that child back on track.
A recent confrontation between one group of kids and workers at a local business is proving to be a crucial test of Bourke's belief in justice reinvestment. The police contacted the Justice Reinvestment team.
So we could start off with trying to get the kids to talk in a big group. Probably won't happen straight away.
An emergency meeting is called to decide what to do with the troublemakers.
You've got to bear in mind that these kids don't have the capacity to stay in a classroom for more than 20 minutes.
But the common trend I see too with these young fellas, it's like a rite of passage. I've been to juvie, I'm tough and everyone can look up to me because I've been there and done that. So, yeah.
They decide to take the boys to the bush to hear their side of the story.
And maybe outlining where they're going to end up if they keep going.
And ask them what we can do for them, what they need from Bourke. What can we give them that's going to keep them out of trouble?
Yep. They can share some of their experiences or some of the issues that they've got. Maybe they won't, we'll see. But
Lawyer Christy Kennedy grew up here and has returned to manage the day-to-day challenges of justice reinvestment in Bourke.
Unfortunately, some people, not just in Bourke but in communities generally, do find themselves in a cycle where it's as though it's inevitable that they will end up in jail, which is sad. But I think the thing is, it's our responsibility now, people like myself who are educated, to help break those cycles.
Big day.
Big day.
Christy and the team are on their way to a national park south of Bourke for the conference with the kids.
So how many adults are coming out?
Possibly 20, and then about 8 kids. I just hope they don't feel overwhelmed with the number of adults around.
Yeah.
Once everyone's at the site, the boys are taken aside for some men's business. The women cook Johnny cakes on the fire. We were asked to stay out of the way.
It's hard to imagine a scene further removed from Bourke's courthouse or a juvenile detention centre. In this traditional Aboriginal meeting place, the adults here are encouraging these kids to talk about their lives and what's on their minds, in the hope of better understanding why they behave the way they do. They want to help them and hopefully halt the momentum which could lead them to jail.
That was the plan, to get out there and bond with those kids and have a discussion with them, and just to let them know that, you know, there was people in the community that cared.
I think no one's ever sat down with them, those young people, and asked them, what is it? What is it that you need? We want to know that.
The planned talks never happen, and the boys retreat to the bus.
You know, and they mightn't have sat down and talked for a bit, but, you know, they'll come around. That was the first trip with them. You know, you just got to build that relationship with those kids first, and I think a few more trips and that'll happen. That will definitely happen.
It was a good first approach. We learned a lot from it, the team, and we got to know them, the young people, a bit better. We could recognise that their needs are more than what we realised, and they need as much support as possible. So it was a learning curve for us, but good first step.
Nothing was solved as such on that day. Does that matter?
No, it doesn't. It's the process itself. It's the fact that that the police and the community are prepared to work together in this sort of partnership, and that's a game changer.
It's a big weekend for Bourke's boys and men. It's the Country Rugby League semi-finals in Brewarrina.
Just weather the storm like we did, eh, boys? The first 10 minutes, these guys are going to come out flat out, eh? Just weather the storm. Big defence, eh? Big defence all around.
We win today, going to the grand final. Mate, I'll be overwhelmed. I'll be proud to play with these young fellas.
The Bourke Warriors have taken a public stance against domestic violence. Players sign a code of conduct and are benched if they breach it.
And how important is the footy for getting the domestic violence message out?
Look, it's a good thing, because none of our players, I think we might have had one incident, but that's one incident from our footy team. You know, the rest, don't know where it came from, but one incident, that's that one bloke had to sit out for those 3 games or whatever. I think it's a great idea, because we want to stand out domestic violence. And yeah, look, I think it's a great idea to have it in the rugby league.
The day starts with a victory for Bourke's under-17s.
We're the Bourke Warriors! We're the Bourke Warriors! Yes, we is! Yes, we is! We play rough and tough! We play rough and tough! Till Collie had enough! Till Collie had enough! Who are we? Bourke! Who are we? Bourke! Who are we? Bourke!
The older Bourke men are up against a team from Cobar, who are younger and bigger. Bourke's on the back foot.
Righto.
Fuck you!
You get fucked. Off you go, you got 10, go. Swing an arm straight in the face, go and have 10. I told you, go back, don't talk to me, go back. Go and have 10.
What was the school? 12-18 to come. Yeah, we were right, mate. We've been here before.
At half-time, Bourke's 8 points behind.
We have Cobar on 20, Bourke on 12.
You just got to stand up, fellas. The last 2 weeks you just stood up to every fucking defensible play you've had. Bigger boys last week, fellas.
You just got to muscle up. Stop putting your hand up to come off all the time.
Let's fucking go, man. We can win this fucking game.
That's it, boys.
That's it. Don't fucking leave it here. Let's get out there and do it, eh? This is the last half, boys. Let's go out there, eh? Brothers, 1, 2, 3.
The second half is brutal as Bourke closes the gap. Leading from the front, Jonathan Knight gives it everything he's got. But it's not enough to win this time.
Congratulations to the Coburg Club on their win, and also congratulations to the Bourke Club for a great season.
Mate, you disappointed?
Yeah, mate, I'm disappointed. For me, it's about getting together and learning respect for these young fellas, you know, and giving something back to them. You know, that's what it is for me.
So the 18-year-old sister had an argument with her aunt. I think her aunt was 40.
Rarely does a night go by in Bourke without the police being called to a domestic violence incident. Bourke has the highest rate of domestic assaults in New South Wales.
The 18-year-old sister got a bit of 4B2.
Oh, that's
timber and cracked her across the arm, and they were wrestling on the floor. And the aunt reached for a bottle of splash and hit her in the head a few times with the splash. Yeah, it didn't break, but caused a bit of an egg on her head, so not a good outcome.
The police are following up on a family fight in a house the night before.
So I've got these this court attendance notice to serve for the domestic incident yesterday, so we'll duck over and serve that.
Yeah, no worries.
Hopefully she's home. Remember me? How you going, mate? How's your head? Yeah, it's gone down a bit. Are you feeling still got headaches? No. No? How'd you go in hospital? They look after you up there? The food any good?
Kinda.
Kinda. If you've got any questions, come down and see me tonight. I'm here till 6 a.m. Cool?
Yeah.
Righto. Have a good night. Yeah. See ya.
Inspired by Justice Reinvestment, Greg Moore decided that simply responding to domestic violence incidents wasn't enough. Instead, this year, he started dropping in on victims and perpetrators to offer help. Jonathan Knight often goes with him as a health worker specialising in substance abuse.
I think it's good for someone like me to come along with someone the community knows, and it's just good to come from someone that, like myself, that's running these programs. I know for sure they really do make a difference.
Today, they're checking in on a woman and her partner who can get violent when he's drunk.
Things are going pretty good with you guys, and Jonathan's had a good yarn and he's sort of agreed to go along to the men's group and have a talk about things. Which is a good thing, don't you think? Because like you were saying last week, he's a good fella, except when he gets a few grogs on board, okay?
Is there anything that we can do to assist you, like in terms of counselling or anything like that, or is your AVO still suiting your needs and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's right.
You haven't had any problems?
No.
That's a good thing. If alcohol's an issue, we can look at maybe before you have to call the police, either call us early or call on a friend, or even before it gets to that point. You're good people and you've got a good lady there, so we thought we'd come down there beyond so that we're not getting called down when poor decisions are being made and it's too late by then, all right? All right, mate, well, thanks for having me on today. Yeah, no worries, we'll see you later.
Come back anyway, John.
Yeah, all right, take care of yourself, mate.
No worries.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, go on.
The police began these visits 10 weeks ago. Not one person visited has re-offended yet.
We've made between 70 and 80 visits, and we haven't had one person that's been visited the subject of a repeat violence offence. So that's quite encouraging when we look at the patterns of offences leading up to preceding those visits. So that's something we'll be continuing indefinitely, and potentially even extending it over to other crime categories.
Yeah, look, I wish someone would have come and said that to me when I was younger and silly, you know, and doing stupid things. I wish someone would have come to me every week and said, "Hey, mate, we got this place to be, you know, you want to come down and have a yarn?" And, mate, I didn't have none of that.
In an isolated country town like Bourke, avoiding jail can sometimes be as simple as learning to drive. A third of the people jailed for driving offences in Australia are Aboriginal.
I think when we turn the corner, we're going too fast and accelerated.
As part of the Justice Reinvestment project, Peter Mackey gives free driving lessons to people in Bourke.
Most kids, their parents don't have cars, or their family members don't have cars, so without us, there's a lot of people that will miss out on getting their licence and having lessons. There's $50-something every time you go for your Ps, so if you're doing that more than 5 times, well, there's $200-something there, so.
And that's a lot of money to a lot of people in Bourke.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, especially if you're not working, you're just on Centrelink payments or something like that.
Tatum Edwards has been driving for years, but never with a licence. This is her first driving lesson.
So we're going fast again around the corner?
Yeah, sorry.
It's all right, we just gotta... You don't need the accelerator to turn the corner, just a little bit.
Well, Peter, he actually inspired most people to go for their licence. Even as soon as they turn 16, boom, they go straight to Peter. Peter helps them out, practice with them, and then takes them driving. And Peter's like a role model to people that hasn't got anybody else to help them drive or help them to get the knowledge to drive.
Peter also helps learners with their paperwork.
Yeah, most people haven't really got their birth certificates or ID. They haven't even got like a student ID because most of them don't go to school. So Peter actually goes around to most people, get their parents' permission that they pay for birth certificates if necessary, and then make sure that they go a step further to get their licence.
Do you got the
Yeah.
In 9 months, Peter's helped 50 people get their L's and P's.
That's a lot, I think, since December, and it's changed a few people's lives already. Like, there's about 4 people, I think, that have got jobs out of getting their licence so far, so... And some of them never even thought about having a licence, so... It's a big thing for them.
The number of people jailed for driving offences in Bourke is now the lowest it's been in 10 years.
Slowly the long day turns to night, and soon they'll turn out the prison light.
It's a prison song Alistair Ferguson's singing to a gathering of Bourke's Aboriginal men down by the Darling River. Among them is his son, Jamie Moore.
They can chain my body, but not my mind. So I'll go over the wall tonight.
When Alistair went to jail, Jamie was only 6. They've both turned their lives around.
My old man, he's been a great role model to myself over the past few years, and he too can talk from experience about his troubles as well as a young man.
Father and son are now part of the mob, the Men of Bourke, another justice reinvestment initiative.
This is about being honest and open about men's business. We've lost our status in our whole sort of family units, being that, well, I guess the breadwinner, and but it's now we sort of fight back and claw back our, you know, to change things into the future. And
it's about men facing up to their mistakes and committing to live by example.
I would say that there is a place and a time where we've went off the road a bit, and we have to come back from that. We have to learn from that.
our women and children are often taken out of their home environment and put in a safe house or a refuge, but whereas that should be the men, as opposed to disrupting the whole routine of our women and our children.
I've had my ups and downs. I've been in some dark places, you know, and I've done some things that I regret. But it's about me and my own journey is taking responsibility for my actions. Because I can't be accountable for anyone else here except until I'm accountable for me and how I behave. And that's the challenge I have as a man.
My baby boy is born in the middle of our spring. A few years off to school, get his education right. Graduates from university, first black man to do.
The community of Bourke itself, you know, there is people out there that are willing to give people that's had a troubled life a second chance, and yeah, and I think that's a great thing about Bourke.
If we can assist people in Bourke to break that cycle, then that can be replicated in other communities.
If you're looking for change, it's not going to take 1 year, bro. It's going to take a lot longer than that. Maybe the change in the 1 year is that we're able to sit together and talk together, but the change that we're all looking for, and that's the change in people, that's going to take a long time.
Freedom rider, wish you were still here. Look at all this so-called freedom, man, that we have down here.
Across town, Bourke is hosting the region's Rugby League Grand Final for the 2nd year in a row.
Bourke Warriors, under 17s are taking on the Light and Reed Redbacks.
The town's turned out to cheer on the under 17s. The younger Warriors don't start well. At half-time, they're losing. But Bourke's been written off before.
I think they got the second half, eh, boys, that you have. Hey, look at the crowd over there. That's what you're playing for, eh? Playing for this here on your shirt, look. Warriors. And you can win this game, eh? You just want it? Yes.
Come
Hey?
on, guys.
How bad is
Don't
one?
sound like you want it, boys.
What you got to do is keep going a bit wider, eh?
Yeah.
If you get it to the fringes, eh, hit the speed, man. Send a few forwards in there. Go to the fringes straight away. You'll get them all the time.
With the people of Bourke rallying to support them, the boys stage a breathtaking comeback.
What a finish to that game. 44 points to 40. Final score, Bourke Warriors.
A win in Bourke could go a long way.
I think all eyes are on Bourke. Right around Australia, people are saying, is this going to work? Some people are cynically of the view that it won't. I'm one of the ones who thinks it can and it will. I've got a lot of hope for Bourke, and I think Bourke has a lot of hope for Bourke.
2016 under 17 premiers,
Bourke now has 3 years of funding to demonstrate that justice reinvestment works. Next week, the scandalous behaviour inside America's university frat houses. See you then.
You can watch this program on iView or go to our website to revisit past episodes at abc.net.au/4corners.